Welcome to the Tim Booker channel, where wisdom is shared. We wish you an enjoyable listening experience. Today, we're going to discuss a book called No Can Do. What does no can do mean? It's exactly as it sounds. It means that once we know something, we must find a way to put it into action. However, in our real lives, it's often quite challenging to do what we know. This book delves into solving this very problem. The authors of this book are three individuals: Ken Blanchard, Paul J. Meyer, and Dick Rua. While the latter two authors might not be as well known to many, the first author, Ken Blanchard, is a globally renowned master of management. One of his most famous books is The 1-Minute Manager. In other words, he imparts the core principles of becoming a manager in just 1 minute. This book is slim, yet it has sold an astonishing 18 million copies and has been translated into 25 languages worldwide. Blanchard is a versatile figure, not only an author but also a speaker and a business consultant. He is regarded as one of the most insightful and influential figures in the business world today. In 2005, Amazon recognized him as one of the 25 most famous best-selling authors in history, inducting him into the Amazon Hall of Fame. As a master in the field of corporate management, Ken Blanchard is frequently invited to conduct various training and presentations on leadership and management methods. During this process, he noticed a peculiar phenomenon. While the audience is engrossed and nodding in agreement during the training, once they return to their daily lives, most of them don't apply what they've learned. This puzzled him. Why do people learn these management methods but fail to use them? What's the point of providing training if people don't apply it? To address this issue, he turned to his friend Paul J. Meyer, who is the second author of this book. Meyer is a successful behavior motivator with a substantial reach. His company has already exceeded $2 billion in global sales, and he is a business prodigy. His company specializes in researching how to inspire people to change their thoughts. Meyer, upon hearing Blanchard's dilemma, decided to join forces to research how to bridge the gap between knowledge and action. The third author, Dick Rua, was a professional speaker in the past and excelled in the field of public speaking and promoting ideas. Together, Blanchard, Meyer, and Rua formed a team dedicated to researching and promoting the concept of no can do, in other words, how to bridge the gap between knowledge and action. So, what does Dick Rua bring to the table? Well, he specialized in public speaking and was a skilled promoter of ideas. Therefore, these three individuals, Blanchard, Meyer, and Rua, came together as a team to investigate and promote the concept of bridging the gap between knowing and doing. You see, in reality, it's all too common for us to know something but struggle to put it into action. We read a book, attend a training, or even get motivated, but then our lives often remain unchanged, or we encounter situations that are even more challenging. Why is this the case? The conventional viewpoint attributes our inability to act on what we know to two main reasons: lack of motivation and inadequate comprehension. However, the authors argue that there is a critical missing link between knowing and doing, and that is the method. The authors assert that the missing link is the method, and it's deceptively simple: repetition. Repetition is what they believe to be the essential bridge between knowing and doing. But it's not just mindless, repetitive practice, it's spaced repetition, meaning repeating the information at intervals during different time periods. While the word repetition may sound simple, the authors suggest that it's a system backed by a set of methods. Now, let's leave the core keyword of repetition aside for now and come back to it at the end of today's episode. First, let's delve into the essence of the problem: why we know but can't do it. The authors conducted extensive research and found that there are three factors: information overload, negative filtering, and lack of follow-through. Once we understand why these are the issues and what the solutions are, we'll understand why repetition is the key to the whole method. Let's take a look one by one, starting with the first point: information overload. What is information overload? For instance, our listeners, after listening to audiobooks, they rush to buy best-selling books to read. On the weekend, there's another interesting workshop, so they quickly sign up for it. They keep enrolling in courses to learn new knowledge, continuously reading new books, feeling like they're filling their days with learning. But have you ever noticed that after a while, it seems like you haven't learned anything, or that you've gained very little despite all your effort? I believe many people have had this experience. Why does this happen? It's because our brains naturally prefer novelty and curiosity. When we encounter new knowledge or methods, we instinctively seek them out. As a result, we habitually keep running forward, constantly seeking new knowledge. For example, you just learned a method of effective communication, but after learning it, you come across a program about efficient reading. At this point, you're more inclined to explore this new knowledge about efficient reading because you've already learned about communication, you know it. Why spend time on it again? Isn't that a waste of time? The reason behind this is that we often overlook the value of revisiting and repeating what we already know. Every time we repeat and practice something we've already learned, our understanding and insights continue to deepen gradually. Most people only see the excitement and sense of achievement in learning something new and neglect the importance of dedicating time to revisit existing knowledge. If we spend time delving deeper into what we already know, we can develop a more profound understanding. However, a problem arises when we consider the limited hours in a day. How can we find time to learn new things and review what we've learned in the past? The author suggests that to address this issue, we must adopt a less is more strategy. This means acknowledging that we can't learn everything, so we should focus on repeating and deeply understanding the knowledge that is genuinely important. This concept aligns perfectly with what we discussed in a previous episode about the book Essentialism. The reason we struggle to make the most of our lives is often that we know too much. We don't need to keep acquiring an endless stream of isolated new knowledge, we need to know less and understand more deeply. For example, when listening to our audiobook program, the key is not to rush to the next episode to see which book is covered. Instead, it's about repeatedly listening to and learning from the books that inspire you or pique your interest. After finding it helpful, consider purchasing and continuing to read that book. Only by continuously investing time in deepening your understanding of what you already know can you truly grasp the underlying principles of that knowledge. The author was once invited to provide training and a lecture to the management team of a company. Before the lecture, the company's CEO quickly pulled the author aside and said, "Blanchard, the reason I invited you is not to point out a new direction for our team. It's to reinforce what we've been repeating for years. I don't need you to tell us something new. I want you to show us how to do what we already know even better." This had a profound impact on the author. Concentrating on a few key things, repeatedly addressing them, actually creates a competitive advantage. This is a crucial insight. So, the first step in going from knowing to doing is to implement this less is more strategy to counter information overload. Have the courage to spend time revisiting what you already know. Now, let's move on to the second point, which impedes us from going from knowing to doing: negative filtering. What is negative filtering? Our brains have a filtering system when learning, and this system is naturally negative. For example, when you come across new knowledge, a new concept, or a new method mentioned in a book, if you've had similar knowledge, experiences, or habits in the past, your brain instinctively resists or at least questions it. This often unintentionally hinders our enthusiasm for learning new knowledge. For instance, you've just learned a new communication method, which emphasizes listening before expressing your own viewpoint. This way, both parties can reach better mutual understanding. However, if your past work experience tells you that you need to be assertive and direct in expressing your views to be taken seriously, you might instinctively question the new, seemingly softer communication method. You might think, this method is too soft. It takes too much time to listen and understand. It's too costly. I'm better off just telling them directly and having them do it. So, if you approach new viewpoints and knowledge with such a mindset, even if you understand them, you may still find it challenging to put them into practice. How can this issue be resolved? Well, the author suggests a highly practical solution, which is called green light thinking. What is green light thinking? It means that when we hear any new ideas or suggestions, we immediately turn on the green light in our minds and think, I believe this idea is viable, and why is it viable? It has these reasons. In other words, you should encourage everyone to accept new suggestions. This can be quite different from our usual cognitive tendencies. Especially when we have a history of success in something, the richer our experience and the deeper our qualifications, the more likely we are to see flaws and problems in the suggestions of others. At such times, we easily tend to dismiss the other person entirely. However, you should know that while not every point or method proposed by others may be entirely correct, there's always a reason behind it. It's just that our inherent thought patterns and past successful experiences often constrain and blind us, preventing us from seeing others' perspectives. Green light thinking helps us find those reasons, discover why someone thinks this idea is reasonable, and opens up a new perspective for understanding the issue. When we approach a problem with a new perspective, we might find that, while there might be contradictions from our previous point of view, looking at it from a different angle still makes sense and can solve certain issues. This is something we might not have considered previously, and it allows us to benefit and grow from different viewpoints. So, the author suggests that instead of always questioning and pondering the flaws in new viewpoints when we encounter them, we should, with green light thinking, actively recognize them as feasible. For instance, taking the earlier example of the communication method, you might genuinely disagree with it. However, you should still tell yourself that you'll switch on the green light first. You should consider that understanding before communication can be useful. Why? You should find reasons. For instance, one reason is that understanding others first enables us to discuss the right topics, which can save time. Sometimes, we realize after a long conversation that we've been talking about entirely different things, which is a significant waste of time. If we understand others before speaking, we can save time. Secondly, understanding and listening before communicating creates a more relaxed atmosphere where everyone's emotions are more stable, making it easier to reach a consensus. So, when you find these reasons, you're more likely to understand the other person. Perhaps this method does hold value, at least in certain scenarios. Therefore, the author recommends that when you hear a new viewpoint, your initial reaction should shift from thinking about the problems with the idea to how you can utilize it and what you could gain from learning it. By consistently thinking in this way, we can become what the author calls reverse paranoiacs. What's a reverse paranoiac? We all know a paranoiac is someone who obsessively clings to their own opinions and ways of thinking. A reverse paranoiac, on the other hand, is someone who persistently examines creative ideas with a positive and practical mindset. Now, you might wonder if this approach seems a bit unrealistic. You might think, isn't this method too counterintuitive? It feels like I'm not allowed to express criticism. I can only say good things, is that right? The author says not to worry. Green light thinking doesn't mean you can't question others. It's just that you should place the questioning phase after the green light phase. After green light, there's a yellow light stage. What's the yellow light for? It's the stage where you express your questions or doubts about the issue. So, it's not that we can't express skepticism or raise questions, it's about allowing your brain to engage in a positive evaluation process before negative feedback. This means finding reasons that have a positive impact and then providing feedback. By doing this, when you do give advice to others, they are more likely to take it seriously because they know you understand their point of view. The author also points out that sometimes, when we focus on exploring the positive possibilities, we can come up with a lot of creative solutions. By the time we reach the yellow light questioning phase, we may struggle to find opposing views. This results in a mutual understanding of the issue, making it much easier to implement. Hence, using green light thinking to break through negative thinking is the second favorable condition that enables us to transition from knowing to doing. Now, let's discuss the third issue that hinders the transition from knowing to doing, a lack of follow-up. What does a lack of follow-up mean? It means we learn a method, make a determination to implement it, and then we often fall back into our old habits after some time. For example, you learn that in communication, you should listen first, understand, and then express your own point of view. But after a while, it's highly likely that your life returns to its old ways, and you continue using your previous methods of communication. You've probably had this experience before, where you learned a new method in a training session, and after 6 months, you realized you've gone back to your old ways. Why does this happen? The author says it's because of a lack of follow-up. Here lies another significant misconception. We tend to believe that for a change to occur, it's essential to learn new methods, new knowledge, and new concepts. The author argues that it's not about new concepts and methods being bad, but what's more important than knowing new concepts and methods is spending time mastering them. Many companies are willing to invest time and money in sending their employees to various training courses, hoping that after these courses, the employees will master new methods and apply them to create more value for the company. However, the reality is that the vast majority of employees make very few changes after attending training sessions. Why does this happen? It's not that we're unwilling to spend a lot of time learning new methods and knowledge, but we're rarely willing to spend enough time following up on what we've already learned. In fact, understanding a method or concept is just the first step in a long journey. The real battlefield is the follow-up. This means that if you spend 1 unit of time on training, you should spend at least 10 units of time and energy on follow-up. But think about it, which company or individual is willing to spend 10 times the amount of time and effort following up on what they've learned? Have we fully grasped the knowledge? Is there any deviation in the execution? What kind of support is required? Have we considered these questions? Most often, our expectations are that after learning a new course or participating in training, our lives will change, and we will have new methods the very next day. Does it work? No, it doesn't. We return to our daily routines, work, and environment, falling back into our old habits. Although we've learned a new method or concept, we don't apply it in our daily lives. So, the author believes that even if we change our mindset and make essential choices, if we don't realize that it takes a substantial amount of time to follow up, we won't be able to resolve the issue of transitioning from knowing to doing. The follow-up stage is genuinely crucial, yet also the most challenging. The author says that a good follow-up system should have at least 3 components: guidance, support, and accountability. It should provide sufficient guidance on how to implement what you've learned, continuous support during the execution, and accountability, meaning praise for doing well and feedback for improvement. Is there anything else you'd like me to translate or explain? I read a book recently called The 4 Habits of Highly Effective Teams. Initially, when I heard the title, I thought it was just another attempt to mimic the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. However, once I started reading, I found that this book is genuinely useful and valuable. This book is also authored by Stephen Kovac, and in it, there's a method mentioned for team management, which involves using a Kanban-style system for feedback. What does this mean? It means that we should present the performance and progress of each team in the most concise way on a single page, like a basketball scoreboard. Just imagine, if during a basketball game, everything stayed the same, except for one thing: the scoreboard was removed, and people had to secretly keep score beneath the court, without the players knowing. The entire basketball game would lose its tension and intensity immediately. The reason our team's performance is enhanced is that everyone can see the scoreboard moving forward and changing, igniting their enthusiasm. It's as simple as that. I designed a 1-page Kanban board for our company using this principle. It might sound straightforward. We list the project progress plans for various projects on a single sheet of paper, and each project team member does one thing: mark the actual progress on this plan with a dot on the chart. This way, by marking a dot every day, we can see the comparison between the actual situation and the planned progress. This helps us coordinate resource allocation more efficiently and swiftly. So, I introduced this method to everyone in a meeting, and they all found it to be very good. It's intuitive, and the feedback is quick. Everyone agreed to adopt this new method and found it to be simple. However, we didn't anticipate the issues that arose in the first week of implementation. Some people had different interpretations of the progress plan, while others questioned whether the dots were placed correctly. Some even felt that marking the chart daily was unnecessary and suggested doing it every few days. Fortunately, they decided not to mark the chart. You see, almost everyone had different understandings of this simple progress marking process, which led to chaos in execution. This situation reminded me of what was mentioned in that book. It states that if it takes 1 unit of time to make a team understand something, it will take 10 times that time to ensure the team truly applies it. So, in practice, our team spent a significant amount of time communicating and coordinating. We provided support and feedback for nearly half a month before the team reached a consensus on various understandings, established new standards, and finally began to execute the 1-page Kanban board. Think about it. It took almost 2 weeks just to get everyone on the same page regarding such a simple task of marking dots on a sheet of paper. In real life, most of the problems we encounter are likely more complex than this, which highlights a common misconception in our lives. We tend to focus on knowing things, investing a lot of time in learning new knowledge and methods. Still, we often fail to prepare our mindset and allocate enough time for continuous practice and follow-up. And it's only through consistent practice and follow-up that we can turn what we know into what we do. Alright, let's summarize the content we've covered so far. The three issues that affect our ability to bridge the gap between knowing and doing are information overload, negative filtering, and a lack of follow-up. The corresponding solutions are essentialism, green light thinking, and continuous follow-up. Knowing these methods, we can better understand the author's initial point, which is the key to unity of knowledge and action is repetition. In essence, when we acquire new knowledge, we should repetitively understand, learn, and explore what we already know, delving deeper into it. During this process, we need to repeatedly practice, follow up, and seek support when issues arise. So, the key to bridging the gap between knowing and doing, if we had to summarize it in 2 words, would be repeated practice. It's just that this repetition occurs intermittently, at different stages and different levels. Spending time on repetition is what makes the transition from knowing to doing possible. These are the core concepts of the book, Knowing to Doing. The solution to information overload is essentialism, while green light thinking addresses negative filtering, and continuous follow-up is the solution for a lack of follow-through. Think about it, these 3 solutions for these issues can be abstracted as 3 stages of behavior change. The first stage is cognitive change, the second stage is attitude change, and the third stage is behavior change. Cognitive, attitude, and behavior changes are the foundation of the theory of behavior change. Understanding these layers of the model, you'll see that the author's method of knowing to doing is essentially applying a model of cognitive, attitude, and behavior change. In addition, diving deeper into these ideas, we can see that essentialism is applied at the cognitive level. Green light thinking, a familiar concept that encourages us to consider issues from other people's perspectives, is applied at the attitude level. The author doesn't delve into the importance of empathy but provides a tool, the green light, that forces us to look for reasons when it's lit, effectively turning an idea into a visual tool. Such tools make it easier for us to remember and implement. In conclusion, the actions at the behavior level, as suggested by the author, include guidance, support, and accountability. These 3 steps are similar in many respects to the habit loop mentioned in the book, The Power of Habit, which involves cue, routine, and reward. Don't you think there's a certain synergy between them? These steps are closely related to the formation of neural chains in our brains. The cultivation of a neural chain involves constant repetition, stimulation, and feedback, making the chain more efficient, which, in turn, leads to the consistent formation of new behaviors. With this understanding, we now have a bottom-up perspective on why, despite knowing so much, we often struggle to live life effectively. We should focus on knowing less but acquiring essential knowledge, then repetitively practice, dig deep into the underlying reasons, and prepare, follow up, and provide feedback throughout the practical process. This way, it becomes easier to transition from knowing to doing, and doing leads to results. Alright, today's book interpretation ends here. Congratulations on completing another book. Thank you for your support and attention. Please subscribe to the Tim Booker channel, book channel. Like and share with your family and friends. Wisdom is worth spreading, and it opens the door to a brighter future. Thank you, and goodbye.